Good afternoon from IIT Gandhinagar. We continue our Indian Knowledge Systems course with the second lecture by Dr. Nanditha Krishna today. I introduced her yesterday. She's a very well-known scholar of ancient India, a scholar of India's environmental traditions and artistic traditions, to put it very briefly. And she has to her credit a large number of important books which have been very widespread and have influenced a lot of other scholars. She also is the director of the C.P. Ramasamy Iyer Foundation in Chennai, which has several wings, one of them doing research in Indology under Madras University, another doing environmental education, and she's also an eminent educationist with a number of schools, I believe 6 or 7, and as part under this foundation. So a huge range of activities, a range of scholarship, and we are privileged to have her with us. So today is the second part of the overview of Indian painting or paintings. And yesterday we saw the murals and their techniques and their various historical manifestations. Today we are going to hear about miniature painting and also finally folk painting, the very important folk inputs of Indian painting. Thank you. And Dr. Nanditha, please have your lecture.
Thank you, Michelle, the team of the Indian Knowledge Systems, teachers, professors of IIT Gandhinagar, and my dear students. Today is the second part of my talk on colors of expression, Indian painting. And this is going to be a little more difficult because I'm taking two genres. Yesterday it was only murals. Of course, we did 10,000 years of mural painting, which is made up today with just a grand variety from all over India. As I said yesterday, it is not possible to cover every kind of painting. I have done as much justice as I can. And although you'll see a lot of text, I think I would like you to share it later on from YouTube or from your university, because if I read everything out, we'll have to go on for 2-3 hours. So I'm going to talk about miniature painting today, which is a very important part of Indian art because it was much easier to do miniature painting, and it also had a very important social and religious role. So in spite of the importance of mural painting, we have mention of art galleries or chitrashalas in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which existed for a restricted audience that could appreciate and comprehend paintings. Much like an art gallery today is visited by the gentile, those who can appreciate art. Many of these were accompanied by a written text, so you have manuscript paintings. This led to the creation of illustrated palm leaf manuscripts. And at this point, I'd like to mention someone whom I'll mention later on also, Raja Sarfoji II, the Maratha king of Thanjavur, because he was such a bibliophile. He collected books and manuscripts from all over India. He sent his people out because the British had taken over his kingdom. He didn't have very much to do. So he just developed this fantastic Saraswati Mahal library. And if you go there, you will see the most wonderful paintings, manuscript paintings, Rigveda, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and so on, from all over the country, preserved in the Saraswati Mahal library in Thanjavur. Now, despite popular belief, miniature painting was not introduced into India by the Muslim invaders. There are several references to miniature portraits by Kalidasa in Shakuntalam, Dandin in Dashakumara Charita. The Shilpa Shastra talks about miniature paintings executed on books, albums, and on perishable materials such as paper and cloth. Of course, this art reached its zenith during the Mughal period, when influences from Persia, from Europe and India all combined to produce what is called Mughal miniature. But there were also different Rajasthani schools, and the Ragamala paintings, that is the moods of the ragas, also developed as miniature paintings. Later on, of course, we have the company paintings, Thanjavur, Mysore paintings. I'm stopping there because after that, we go to a different kind of painting. Like we go into what Raja Ravi Verma, the Bengal school and all, where it was far more the work of an individual and it was not a complete school. And frankly, it was taking too much time. And Michel Danino gave me 45 minutes. Now, the early miniatures have been completely lost, and the earliest extant ones belong to the 8th or 9th centuries, to the Palla period in northeast India. They were representations of the Buddhist yantra, which were visual aids for the mantra and the dharini. The miniature images of Mahayana Buddhism were provided with attributes and symbols. And conforming to the canons of iconography, these Buddhist miniatures would deify Buddhist thought, such as Prajna Paramita, the universal mother, the mother of all the Buddhas, and she was a personification of esoteric knowledge. The Buddhist paintings were drawn in red and white. Miniatures were painted according to the rules of mural painting, the same rules. So proportions were exactly on the Tala system of mural painting. Effects such as foreshortening were derived from the study of sculptures rather than from reality. Whereas the murals would have had real people posing or, from whom they observed their movements, the miniatures were really the miniaturization of stone sculpture. One very important part of miniature painting, especially palm leaf painting, is that it was an act of faith and the means of acquiring merit. I mean, we know even today there are women who sit at home and write Sri Rama Jayam on entire books and so on. So those who did this, monks, priests and so on, for them it was a means of acquiring merit. And miniature painting gradually acquired an independence as it went further. Artists used natural stone colors on a paper-based canvas, also known as vasli. The ingredients were gold, silver, colors extracted from minerals, precious stones, and conch shells. Now I start with the Palla Miniatures, which are the earliest miniatures in India, the earliest to be found. But look at the sophistication of this. So this could not have been the earliest. There must have been many more before the Pallas, but this is what we have today. The style disappeared by the late 12th century. The painting is characterized by sinuous lines, movement, and subdued tones of color. It is a naturalistic style which resembles the ideals of bronze and stone sculpture and reflects some of the classical art of Ajanta. I mean, whoever were the painters of Ajanta were obviously extremely influential, since we find Ajanta re-echoing in every aspect of Indian painting. In Western India, we have the development of the Jain and the Vaishnava manuscripts, where you have animated images. The colors were warm and muted, except the blues and the bright reds you can see. The human figure was very simple and stood out thickly against the background. And there was rich ornamentation, which resulted in heavy stylization. The Jain painters, interestingly, preferred three-quarter profiles, displacing one of the eyes to avoid foreshortening, while front and image had eyes set near the bridge of the nose. This form of painting the eyes was followed much, much later in the 20th century by the Bengal painter Jamini Roy. Paintings were harmonized with the text. The Jain paintings gave rise to the Gujarat school, from where it spread to Rajasthan, Malwa, Marwar, and evolved into Rajput painting. Now, I want to start with Mughal miniatures. The Mughal school of miniature painting was set up in Humayun's time, and it reached its zenith under Akbar and Jahangir. Mughal miniatures were small. Many were not even more than a few square inches. They were brightly colored and with a lot of detail, used to illustrate manuscripts and books. Despite their very tiny size, they are very precise, with some lines painted using brushes composed of a single hair. So you can imagine how difficult that would have been. They're a blend of the bold, vivid colors preferred by Indian painters and the fine, delicate lines preferred by Persian painters. You also find European influence, which was brought to India by Jesuit missionaries, especially the Italians. Mughal miniatures drew from India, Persia, and Europe. Unlike Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist manuscripts, Mughals commissioned several portraits of themselves, and I'm going to show you each one of the Mughal kings as he was perceived by himself or the artist. Animals and plants were very favored subjects. In the Mughal school, naturalism in nature became fundamental. Landscape details were inspired by Far Eastern arts, such as clouds from Chinese paintings, mountains and water from Central Asian art, and the Persian tradition of stressing the linearity of lines. And in contrast to the large leafy traditions of Indian tradition, trees of Indian tradition, you find that they had a predilection for cypresses, plane trees, and shrubs, which were reminiscent of Persian flora. Now, the first king who really set up an atelier was Humayun. When he was in exile in Persia, he was exposed to Persian miniature painting. This is supposed to be Humayun, and although I was not able to obtain a picture of Humayun himself, this was done by his son. I mean, not by his son, but it was in the period of Akbar. So presumably Akbar would have said, yes, yes, this is what my father looked like. He commissioned an unusually large painting on cloth of the princes of the house of Timur. Originally, it was a group portrait with his sons, to which Jahangir added. When Humayun returned to India, he brought back two Persian artists, Abdas Samad and Mir Saeed Ali, who really set up the Mughal school of painting. In fact, Akbar learned to draw and paint from Abdas Samad. Yet he commissioned an illustrated text of the Khamsa of Nizami, in which different styles of several artists are still apparent. He also commissioned two portraits of himself with his family members. Now, one very important aspect of Mughal painting is that the names of the artists are given. In Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain paintings, whether it's murals or miniatures, it was an offering. It was a religious offering, or it was to decorate the walls of the monastery as a kind of road map for the monks to lead a different life. But there was an effacement, self-effacement. The painters never put down their names. Whereas in Mughal miniatures, they put down the name of the painters, whether it was Hindu or Islamic. Akbar, as I said earlier, studied painting in his youth, but I don't know how far these studies would have gone. There was a greater attempt to portray reality as well as distance and perspective. Akbar hired over 100 painters to practice the Mughal style painting. The Aini Akbari shows the importance the art had attained in his period. Basically Persian in style, the subjects depicted were scenes of warfare, hunting, trials of strength, sumptuous costumes, ornamentation, and all the regalia favored by a royal patron. Important works as such were the Tuti Nama, Hamza Nama, Gulistan, the Khamsa of Nizami, which was started by Humayun, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The themes included animal fables, individual portraits, and paintings on a variety of subjects. Mughal style in this period refined itself with elements of realism and naturalism. Akbar established the celebratory theme in Mughal art. So the artist had to show off spectacles and grand symbols to create an image of prosperity. He also encouraged his people to write down and record what they remembered from earlier times to ensure that the future would remember the greatness of the Mughal Empire. He was a man of history with a vision for the future, and it came out in every aspect of his life. This is a portrait of Akbar. This is the painting which was started by Humayun, the princess of the house of Timur, and this was finished during Jahangir's period, where even Jahangir comes in. These are the opening pages of the Kamsa of Nizabi. This is from Akbar's period. The first picture is the birth of Salim, and you can see the difference. Excuse me. The Rajput princess is brown skinned, whereas all the others are fair skinned or light skinned, whatever you say. And this is, you can see the baby being held by one of the women. In the center, this is Akbar having a religious assembly of different faiths. As you know, he was very interested in religion and was always trying to have discussions. The third is a scene from the Hamza Nama. Now, this is very Persian, very exotic and stylized, very Persian in style. So the Hamza was, I think, the uncle of the Prophet. So Hamza Nama is the story of Hamza and his nephew. Mughal painting in this period was also done on boxes and furniture and a lot of other things. So this is, for example, Ganjifa cards, which I found very interesting. The next Mughal king, whom I'm mentioning, is Jahangir. Now I'm going to go faster. Was very influenced by European painting because he was sent gifts of oil paintings, including portraits of the king and the queen. He encouraged his artists to take up single point perspective. He particularly encouraged paintings of events of his life and studies of birds, flowers, and animals. He commissioned very accurate pictures of the natural world. He was very interested in the structure of animals, of plants, and so on. He also had the Jahangir Nama written during his lifetime, which is an illustrated, well, they say autobiographical account of his reign. Now here's Jahangir. The previous one was Jahangir himself. This is Jahangir hunting with the falcon. And I want you to see the border over here. How elaborate, how beautifully it's done. Noor Jahan. And this picture is a study of different birds. And this is one of the few images we have of the dodo, which of course disappeared completely. The center, we have a study of flowers. And on the right side, there's an image of Jahangir. I read very often Jahangir loved animals. He didn't love animals. He was curious about animals, that like any child is curious about a lot of things. He dissected them and he went hunting. You can see over here, scene of a hunt. He's hunting with cheetahs. So many animals are killed, He was not a lover of animals. The next king, Shah Jahan, preferred architecture. I don't have to tell you that. Now the court paintings become rigid and formal. Earlier, look at the movement, even in the hunting pictures. But now Shah Jahan, on the other side, on the right side, you see a court of Shah Jahan. All the nobles and the king were always in profile. And only courtiers and servants were portrayed, were painted with detail and individuality. So you can see the different kinds of people over here and the very rigid formality. The last king, Aurangzeb, rejected painting, largely for religious reasons. reasons and probably commissioned very few paintings. However, some of the best Mughal paintings were made for him in the early part of his reign, when he just came in and before he stopped the use of painting. So this is this is actually the newly crowned Emperor Aurangzeb on his golden throne. The swan song of Mughal miniature painting was to be seen in the Deccan, where the Muslim sultanates were primarily Shia, Ahmednagar, Berar, Bidar, Bijapur and Golconda. For them, paintings was more of an inward journey with mystic and fantastic overtones. So to that extent, there was a lot of Hindu influence in Deccani painting. It was based on local tradition, brilliant colors, and this is a time when the Ragamala paintings first appeared, and which were an innovation of the Deccan school of painting. They were created by several different artists and are probably the most beautiful Indian paintings from any period, made for Hindu patrons. And the finale of the school is to be seen in the Deccan style, which differs by the finale of the Mughal school is to be seen in the Deccan style, which differs by its preference for rigid, stylized, and decorative forms. So here are some Deccan paintings. This is on the left, this is Hindola Raga, and on the right, this is the prince riding a composite elephant. Now, I show this because the influence of Vijayanagar is very apparent over here. In Vijayanagar painting, you have animals. You have Kama and Rati on horses and so on. And the animals are made up of people, women, men, and so on. And similarly, in Deccani painting, in spite of the fact that they have tried a very Persian linear form, you still have these composite figures which were influenced by Vijayanagar. So, besides Chinese and Central Asian influences, European influences came in with the Italians. Mughal painting was a fusion between Indian, Persian, and European ideals of painting. Now we go on from here to the Rajput School, which was as Indian as the Mughal school was composed of alien ideas. It was spontaneous and folksy, unlike the heraldic court style. And it was really derived from the Gujarat paintings, the Gujarat miniatures, which we saw earlier. They are based on drawings with bright splashes of color. There are two main branches, Rajasthani and Pahari. Rajput paintings depict scenes of everyday life, festivals, subjects from the epics and Puranas, kings and their retinue, and important episodes from the life of Lord Krishna, because this coincides with the spread of the Krishna cult as a part of the Bhakti movement in North India. Again, colors were extracted from minerals, plants, conch shells, and even precious stones. Very fine brushes were used. Now, this is a beautiful painting from Mewar. Godhuli is the evening when the cows are brought back. And Mewar stands out for its absolute simplicity and freshness. And it recalls the rural origins of the artists. The Mewar school includes Chavan, Nathdwara, Devgarh, Udaipur, and Savar styles. So just to indicate to you, this is Nathdwara, which is the worship of Srinath Ji. Chavand, you can see it with the big open eyes. Savar, you have this procession of the king on his elephant. Then Udaipur, which is a very stiff, rigid style with a lot of buildings around. Devgarh. And the last is Mewar. You can see the beautiful green tree and Krishna Radha in conversation. Finally, from the school of Mewar, this is a Ragamala painting. So the Ragamala of Deccan had by now gone into Rajasthani art. Now, the other important schools of Rajasthan include Marwar, Bundelkhand, and Bundi, and finally the Bihar school. It is not really in Rajasthan, but it's part of the same movement. So this is the Marwar school. Kishangarh, Jodhpur, Bikaner, Pali, and Ghanera. First two are actually Marwar itself, and they're very beautiful. This is a scene of a singer whose music is attracting the deer. On the right, you have the kings spearing a tiger and shooting a tiger, rather violent, I'm afraid. Kishangarh is very exquisite and highly stylized. In fact, it's very popular, and you must have seen a lot of Kishangarh paintings around the country. Khanirao is a far more folksy type, very natural, unlike the other forms of Marwar painting. Bikaner is simple with very rich colors. And finally, look at this Marwar painting with the trees, the plants, lovely colors, varying colors, beautiful. Jodhpur, again, a lot of construction buildings. Bundelkhand is known for its colorful paintings. I'm rushing. I'm sorry I can't do anything about this because this lecture is really two lectures. Bundi, again in Bundi you have, look at the shades of green in the background behind Krishna and the gopis. Bihar, Jaipur. Now, what are the themes in Rajasthani miniatures? Mainly Krishna Leela. He was a very popular topic. You also have the Ramayana and Mahabharata, but Krishna was most popular. By the way, interestingly, Ghanera is the place where Mirabai came from. And the Ghanera family, even today, worships the Krishna, which Mirabai worshipped. And you have, of course, epic paintings, Ragamalas, Rasamanjari, royalty, court life, wars, hunting, Zenana women, and the Baramasa. After this, we come to Pahari, whose important centers were at Basholi, Jammu, Buler, and Kangra. It's a very lively, romantic, and evocative school, unlike the very folksy Rajasthani schools. The drawings are very skillfully done and very refined. I think that they are far superior to other schools of Indian miniature painting, and you will see why. And of these, especially Kangra is extremely beautiful, very, very, very lovely. The themes were primarily Sringara. Even the Krishna story has got Sringara, social themes, the love story of Radha Krishna. But the love story of Radha Krishna was also a source of spiritual experience based on the Bhagavata Purana and Gita Govinda. You know, this is very interesting because these are done where Pahari, that means Himachal Pradesh, Jammu, and so on. Bhagavata Purana was written in Tamil Nadu, Gita Govinda in the east, in Orissa and Bengal. And they are influencing the painting of Pahar. So this is India, my friends. You know, one country. We were never, there was nothing very exclusive to any part of this subcontinent. Look at the colors. This is Holi. Of course, any painting of Holi would have a lot of colors, but this is very uniquely Pahari. Basholi, look at the shades of green again. And Krishna and the gopis, very rich colors. Basholi is known for its vivid, evocative colors, bold lines, and deep set facial patterns. There are bright colors and they used glossy enamel. Figures are clad in rich costumes with stylized faces and large bulging eyes, which give a unique individuality to the paintings. The popular themes, of course, are local rulers, Shiva, Radha, Krishna, and stories from the Bhagavad Purana. This is the painting from the Jammu school, Buler. See how exquisite it is. Very simple, straightforward lines, and yet so exquisite. Finally, we come to Kangra paintings, which were very beautiful. It was primarily on the life of Krishna, Nala, Damayanti, Ramayana, and so on. The striking feature is lush greenery with a varied and vast foliage, different kinds of trees, which are depicted by the use of different shades of green. Sorry, I had a glass of water. Flowering plants and creepers, leafless trees, rivulets, brooks, and so on. Various shades of primary colors and delicate shades were used in Kangra painting. Light pink, which is quite rare in Indian art, was used in the upper hills to indicate distance. Kangra paintings depict feminine forms with beauty and grace. All the faces of men or women are soft and very refined. Later, there were also nocturnal scenes, storms and lightning, and paintings had complex compositions of many figures and elaborate landscapes. Kangra painters used vegetable and mineral colors with soft tonal shading, exquisitely created backgrounds which merged with the theme. The Kangra paintings are as romantic as Kalidasa's description of the mountains. Astyuttarasyam Dishidevatatmam Himalayonam Anakadiraj. So, if Kalidasa put it down in verse, the Kangra painters put it down in their paintings. Nothing jars the sensibilities, nothing detracts the beauty of the environment, and nothing distracts the tension of the situation. So one side we have Krishna, the other side we have Rama. Look at Rama. I mean, look at the exquisite lines of his face, Sita and Lakshmana. Now we come to Thanjavur and Mysore painting, and you're going to wonder why I went from north to south. But that is because the period is about the same, and simultaneously as miniature painting was done there, when we see the Thanjavur and Mysore paintings. These were paintings primarily to go into the home, into the puja room, and were used as objects of prayer. With the fall of the Vijayanagar Empire, after the Battle of Talikota, the artists migrated to various other courts. The artists were called Rajus, a community of Rajus. They went to many courts, but the most important were Mysore and Thanjavur. Absorbing local artistic traditions, the erstwhile Vijayanagar School of Painting evolved into many styles of painting in South India. As you know, Vijayanagara was a Hindu revivalist movement, not just a kingdom. And the strong Hindu traditions of Vijayanagara were continued, and the themes were generally of Hindu deities and epic stories, although kings and their spouses were also occasionally subjects of paintings. Thanjavur painting, or Tanjore painting, was developed in the town of Thanjavur in South India. It was inspired by Vijayanagara and Nayak painting, but it really came to its own in the court of the Maratha kings of Thanjavur. This is again another example where you have paintings from Vijayanagara, Nayak in Thanjavur in Tamil Nadu, where the kings who were supporting them were Marathas. When Vijayanagar was destroyed, the painters, as I said, moved to these courts. The paintings are done on canvas, pasted over jackfruit with gum arabic, burnished, and then evenly coated with a paste of French chalk or gopi or powdered limestone, which was a binding medium, and then dried. Rich and vivid colors, green, red, green, white, blue, made up simple compositions. Now, over this, you had what is called gesso work, where glittering gold foil overlaid on extensive gesso work created an effect of relief. So some parts of the painting come out a little bit, like the center one, which is the most famous and popular subject for Thanjavur paintings. It's called Butter Krishna or Venna Krishna. Venna means butter. Now the dark blue is very flat, but the gold, all the gold work is in relief, so it comes out very slightly. Colors again were vegetable mineral. Brushes were made with squirrel hairs. For fine lines, a brush made of pointed grass blades was used. Nowadays, everybody is doing Thanjavur paintings with poster colors, so you can make out the difference. Now here you have the influence of Deccani, Jayanagar, Maratha, and even European or company styles of paintings. You have angels. What is this? Sometimes you have angels in Maratha, in these Thanjavur paintings, and sometimes you have prosceniums, like a theatre, curtains. For example, Krishna actually looks as if he's sitting in the middle of a stage, and sometimes you have curtains and so on. Now, on the left is a Krishna on glass painting, which is a glass painting. Now, in the court of the Marathas, there were about 40 Chinese artists, and they brought in this Chinese style of glass painting, which is really sort of a reverse kind of painting, where the last part is done first, that is the eyes and the eyebrows and the decoration. And then after that, all that is done first, and then you put in the background and the body colors and so on. On the other side, you have Vayu, which is done on mica. So there were different medium on which these Thanjavur paintings were done. Now, a related period of painting is the Mysore painting, which also evolved from Vijayanagara. They're very elegant, but done the same way with gesso work and gold, muted colors and attention to details. Again, the themes are mostly Hindu deities and scenes from the epics. Of the many Wadayar kings, especially after Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, after their period, when the Wadayars came back, the artists were greatly encouraged, and Krishna Raja Wadayar wrote his Sri Tattvanidhi, which is a compendium of illustrations with instructions on composition, placement, color, individual tributes, and moods. Ragas, seasons, events, animals, plants are also depicted by the king. Krishna Raja Wadayar was a king of Mysore. On the walls of the Jagan Mohan Palace in Mysore, there's a range of paintings which flourished under Krishna Raja Wadayar. The colors again came from natural sources, and for drawing fine lines, a brush made of pointed grass was used, while colors were filled in with brushes made from squirrel hair. Due to the long-lasting color quality of the colors, Mysore paintings retain their freshness even today. The base, as in the Thanjavur painting, was paper, wood, cloth, or the wall. Paper board was made of paper pulp. Now, in the case of Thanjavur paintings, on a wooden board, they stuck cloth or canvas, and on top of it, they put in this gesso work and painted. But here, the paper board was made of paper pulp or waste paper, which was dried in the sun and then rubbed smooth, burnished with a polished quartz pebble. The cloth was then pasted on the wooden board using a paste composed of dry white lead mixed with gum and gruel, ganji. The board was dried and burnished. Wood surfaces were prepared by applying dry white lead, yellow ochre, and gum. Walls were treated with yellow ochre, chalk, and gum. After preparation of the base, a rough sketch was drawn, and with the twigs of the tamarind tree. Interestingly, that is still used even today. And the furthest objects, such as the sky, hill, and river, were painted. And finally, human figures were drawn in detail. After finishing, after coloring, the artist would fill in the faces, dress, and ornaments, including the gesso work. But while it is an important part of Mysore painting, it is not in such a state of relief as Thanjavur paintings. Now, I come to the last part of this talk, and that is folk art. Now, I'm really going to run. I'm starting with Kolam and Rangoli, Alpana, which is a part of all folk everyday art which every Indian woman does. Now, let's start with Madupani paintings, which originated in the Ramayana period. Actually, it's a Mithila school of painting, and Mithila, as you know, is in Nepal. And it is believed that Janaka, King Janaka, told his artists to decorate the palace with their paintings for the wedding. In the past, villagers used to paint on the mud walls. This style of art consists of geometric designs, events from the epics, a lot of greenery, a lot of plants, flowers, and so on. Madhubani art has 5 distinct styles: Bharni, Kachni, Tantrik, Godna, and Kopar. The first 3 were mainly done by Brahmin and Kayast women with mainly religious themes. And the others, other castes included aspects of their daily life, such as the tale of Raja Shailesh. But nowadays, there's no caste-based difference in their work, and all women work in all 5 styles. Madhubani painting was originally done on freshly plastered mud walls, and they made from powdered rice paste using a variety of tools, including fingers, twigs, brushes, matchsticks, and again natural dyes and pigments. But nowadays, it's poster colors. In fact, in all the folk paintings nowadays, except in 1 or 2 places, poster paints have really taken over. Madhubani paintings generally depict a lot of nature and, again, as I said, tales from the epics. The sun, the moon, Tulsi. Earlier we saw that. This is all the sun. And here you have different deities, but no space is left empty. The painting on the right side, you can see, is completely filled in. Gaps are filled by paintings of flowers, animals, birds, and even geometric designs if nothing else is available. The next one we go to is Par, a kind of scroll plate painting narrating the stories of Babuji and Devnarayan, folk deities of Rajasthan. Priest singers called Bhupas carry around the paintings, narrating their stories. And the Joshi families of Bhilwara and Shahpura are the traditional artists. So you can see how exquisite it is. This is a modern part. I had an older one in my possession, but the photograph didn't come out very well. Then we go to the Warli paintings of Maharashtra, which are painted on mud walls and resemble prehistoric cave paintings. They depict scenes of human figures engaged in social activities like hunting, dancing, and mainly agriculture. One thing which is Warli paintings are done with white paste, which is a mixture of rice and water with gum as binding. They use a bamboo stick, which is chewed at one end as a paintbrush. Now, the circle, which is always at the center of Warli painting, depicts the sun and the moon, while the triangle represents mountains and conical trees. So, the square is a sacred enclosure or land, which is the central motif of each painting. The square is known as the Chauk or Chaukat, the Dev Chauk and the Lagna Chauk. And generally, Dev Chauk contains an image of Palla Ghata, the mother goddess, who symbolizes fertility. This is very popular in Warli painting, a series of circles that is very characteristic. Here's another one with the central Chauk. Then we go to the Gond paintings. The word Gond comes from the word Gond, which apparently is a word of Dravidian origin, which means green mountain. The Gond tribes of central India create beautiful depictions of animals, creation myths, rituals, and festivals. They're probably the oldest people who inhabited the subcontinent. Gond paintings are created with dots and dashes, not unlike the Aboriginal tribes of Australia. It's very interesting. Now, you can see on top in that house, the paintings are done on the walls. All these folk paintings were once done on walls. Now you see them on paper. Then we come to the Patachitra of Orissa. Now, Patachitra is a general term for cloth-based scroll paintings, and the earliest paintings were done by Chitrakars of Lord Jagannath and Lord Krishna. The painters still use vegetable and mineral colors, and this old tradition of Oriya painting still survives among the artists or Chitrakars of Puri, Raghurajpur, Paralekha, Mundi, and Sonepur. Raghurajpur especially is a village of painting. You have to go and see it to even understand what I mean, because everybody there is painting. Painting is so popular in Orissa that it is seen everywhere, on the walls of the streets and so on. Now the themes are, of course, Jagannath, Vaishnava, all the various deities. Odisha Patachitra are divided into three categories: paintings on cloth or Patachitra, paintings on walls or Bhitti Chitra, and palm leaf engravings or Talapatra Chitra or Poti Chitra. In the case of Talapatra Chitra, the palm leaves are left to harden and then sewn together. The images are drawn with black ink on rows of equal-sized panels of palm leaf that are sewn together. These panels can be folded and packed in a compact pile. These illustrations are very intricate and elaborate. So the colors are again vegetable and mineral, though nowadays it's poster. White comes from conch shells, mineral and vegetable colors used, Ingula for red, Haritala for yellow, Ramraj, indigo for blue, black is prepared with coconut shells, and so on. The brushes are made of the hair of domestic animals tied to the end of a bamboo stick. The painters don't use pencil or charcoal for the drawing. They draw directly with the brush, either in light red or yellow, after which the colors are filled in. And the patta is given a lacquer coating to protect it from the weather, thus making it into a very glossy painting. So this is the Talapatra Chitra, Patachitra, which you see over here. Earlier you saw the colorful one. In Bengal, the same Patachitra is called Patachitra, and it's referred to even in 1st century Buddhist literature. In the Harivansha, in the 2nd century, in Abhigyana Shakuntalam, in Malavikagni Mitra, Harsha Charitra, and Uttarama Charitra. Bengali Patachitra is divided into Durga pot. Pot is really Pata. Chalachitra, tribal Patachitra, Medinipur Patachitra, and Kalighat Patachitra. Chalachitra refers to Devi Chal or Durga Chal. On the right hand top corner, you can see a Chalchitra, which is the Devi Chal, Durga Chal, which is the background of the Durga Pratima. So Chal means covering. Originally, these were used to give proper proportion to the structure. This tradition is very ancient and is still maintained behind every Durga during the Durga Puja period. The subjects are religious and epic stories, and like the Rajasthani and Oriya Patachitra, there are also continuous stories used by wandering minstrels. The first picture is actually an older one, Patachitra, the story of Krishna. In the middle, this woman is using the tradition of the Patachitra to give a social message. This is how it's done. They keep rolling up the picture and narrating a story. Then we come to Kalamkari, which means pen worked. It's concentrated in Andhra, particularly Sri Kalahasti and Machilipatnam. It requires a constant supply of clean river water. That is why, because there you have the river Swarnamukhi, and the paintings are washed and as the river, in the river itself. And when you go there, you will see all these paintings on floating on the river. Kalamkari was the occupation of rural craftswomen and men in the past and continues to be passed down from one generation to the next. The cloth is stiffened using mordant and buffalo milk and then dried in the sun. The craftsman sketches the design outlined with black or kasabi, and colors are obtained from natural pigments. Even today, they use only vegetable colors and natural pigments. Every Kalamkari painting is unique. They do not have any repetition. Each one is the creation of one individual artist. Then we come to Pichwai, which comes from the word pitch, meaning black, and wai, meaning hanging. They hung on the walls of temples and houses, especially Nathdwara, near Udaipur, where they originated. They're painted on both cloth and paper, and very, very intricate and dramatic painting. You can see on the left side, there are these women with this lovely tree with so many birds. On the right, you have Srinathji of Nathdwara, and you have the cows of Sri Krishna, tails of Sri Krishna all around. It's really a beautiful enamel painting. But here, interestingly, Pichwai can take several months. It requires great skill. Each Pichwai is the result of a collective effort. There's no individual artist. Pichwai paintings blend spirituality with art. They are meant as objects of worship. And we come to a very interesting school, Kali Ghat, which is a variation of folk painting. It's a relatively new form which originated in the 19th century in West Bengal, around the Kali Ghat temple. And it was the inspiration for Jamini Roy's paintings. On the right, this woman is actually a painting by Jamini Roy. Artists created designs on paper. They were known as potwas, and depicted the normal life, common people, nobility, devdasis, and so on. The colors were natural colors originally. Some of the paintings are quite humorous. Look at this one. First one, a woman is beating her husband with a broom. The middle one is, of course, the story of the Swayamvara of Draupadi, when Arjuna is firing his arrow into the moving fish. And on the right, you have a barber cleaning the ear of a woman. Now, this is something I had to share with you. It's a unique tribal art form found in the Nilgiris, which was discovered by our foundation and presented to the world. It's a place called Eruthupare, which is a 3,000-year-old rock site. I mention this because it's all over India. Please go and search, but don't leave it there. What we did was we found it in the Nilgiris, and the Kurumbas believed that the paintings were the work of their ancestors. One day in the year, on the day before their annual festival, they would do it on their huts. So we said, why don't you move out of the huts? So they now do it on paper, and they draw with burnt twigs, color the drawings with a resin extracted from the bark of the kino tree, Pterocarpus marsupium, green leaves and red mud. It's a slow and cumbersome method, but it's still used, and it's beautiful. And the figures are flat and similar to Wadli, but they're quite rectangular. See, deprived of their forests, the Kurumbas had lost their traditional skills. And although they originally painted on the walls of their huts, what we did was work with the Kurumbas, and today they're painting on paper, handmade paper, and they're selling it in India all over the world. So this is what you can do also. There are such paintings all over. See, this is the original painting is on the left side, which you can't see. So I just had it repeated on the right side to show you what the 3,000-year-old painting was. And now this is what they do on paper. Finally, we come to the company style, company kalam, as it's It's an Indo-European hybrid style made by Indian artists who work for European patrons. I'm not speaking about the Western painters like the Daniels, I'm talking about the Indians. They blended Rajput, Mughal, Western treatments of perspective, volume, and so on. Paintings are small. I have many reflecting the Indian miniature tradition. But the natural history paintings, in fact, there's one book of plants which could beat Audubon. It's in the Saraswati Mahal Library. The leading centers of this painting were the British settlements of Calcutta, which was a presidency, Madras presidency, Delhi, of course, Lucknow, Patna, Bangalore, and the Maratha court of Thanjavur, which had a lot of Western influence. And it's done in Western watercolors. So you can see on the left a group of courtesans, on the right an East India company, really like a Nawab, an official with his servants. So there are many other tribal and rural communities who continue their painting traditions. Much more documentation must be done, and if I had another 2 hours, I could have shown you very much more. Indians love color. Paintings gives expression to their emotion and their love for colorful celebration. Hence, I call this expressions of color. I'd like to end by thanking IIT Gandhinagar, Professor Michel Danino, the team of Indian Knowledge Systems, the students and other patient listeners. Thank you all very much.